Controller manufacturer Dyonder recently reached out to me and asked if I wanted to review their new lineup of PC slash PS4 gaming controllers. And I previously had experience with their light up RGB PS4 PC controller, and I had a lot of positive things to say about it, especially because you can get them off Amazon for around $30 to $25. And I didn't feel like Dyonder as a manufacturer cut a lot of the corners that controller manufacturers typically do when it comes to a lower budget offering. I felt like the controls felt good, the joysticks moved well, the rumble was okay, but overall you had a good package for the price point. And Dyonder's trying to do the same thing with this new lineup and even offering it at a little cheaper than that controller was. And so in this video, I'm going to go over if this controller is worth purchasing and if it's worth having as your main controller for your PC or PS4. And another thing that I'm also going to be doing is, for those of you watching, if you subscribe to this channel and comment on this video, I'm going to give you the opportunity to win one of these controllers. So let's take a look. First thing I want to comment on is the packaging looks really colorful and appealing as far as I'm concerned, which is a bit of a step up from the previous controller Dyonder sent me, which came in almost a very generic type of box, which might be important for some people like me who do collect the boxes and display them inside their home arcades or their gaming setups. And so just a little thing, it's not a major deal breaker or anything, but something I thought I'd mention as I'm going through this. Now, when you unbox these controllers, there's nothing too special to them. They have just generic wrapping. You have the manual for the controller and how to connect it to a PC or your PS4. And you also have a charging wire. Now, one thing I do want to highlight, the previous controller I was given by Dyonder is charged via a micro USB, and this controller is charged via a USB-C. Now, as it stands, one thing I wanted to highlight, and something that was mentioned to me when this controller was sent to me, was that the battery life on these controllers are improved over the previous RGB controller that was sent to me. And I have reason to believe that's completely true because I've been using this controller quite excessively through my play testing over the past handful of days, and my computer is still reading it at about 99%, meaning that I've barely lost any battery life, which to me is quite good. Now, getting into the feel of this controller, I will say I liked the almost matte tactile feeling, I guess, of the previous RGB controller, which is what I was actually using for my PC gaming quite frequently over the past little while. And moving into this, it's a little smoother, which for some people, they may not like that you have this kind of smoothed out edging on the controller. But for me, it's something I got used to. I'm not going to say it's a deal breaker, but just something worth mentioning. These controllers are also just a little smaller than the previous one that Dyonder sent me, which I'm actually not opposed to. I think it's actually almost the perfect size. The other thing that I also want to highlight as well is the face buttons, like the X, circle, square. They feel a little squishier than the previous Dyonder controller I was given. Now, I'm not using these controllers for any sort of hardcore gaming. Currently I'm playing, especially with the season that we have, Halloween season, I've been playing Silent Hill 2 Remake with these controllers. So it's not a big deal breaker, but some guys who are into fighters, they may find that they don't like how squishy this may feel. Again, nothing majorly out of the norm in terms of third-party controllers, but something I thought that was worth mentioning. However, with that being said, I do like how the squishiness does feel on the D-pad compared to the previous Dyonder controller I was sent, as I do feel like it's just more, in terms of tactile feeling, feels relatively good. Now, for me, one of the most important things when it comes to a third-party controller, whether it's for Xbox, whether it's for PC, whether it's for Switch, whether it's for PS4, the most important thing to me is how do the joysticks feel and what are the dead zones like? And so what I mean by that is I've tested some really bad Nintendo Switch controllers. I've tested some pretty bad Xbox controllers. And one of the things that I've noticed that really to me makes them a deal breaker is that the joysticks just don't work well enough when it comes to the directional movements. And especially in shooters, that can make it difficult to aim in a first-person shooter or a third-person game like Silent Hill 2. Now, one of the things that seems typical to me with a lot of PlayStation controllers, even the first-party ones, is that the aiming is a bit more stiff, I've always found, when it comes to using those joysticks. And if we're basing it off of that, the Dyonder controller essentially feels almost one-to-one with a PlayStation 4 controller, which for some people is a good thing or a bad thing. I myself, I've gotten pretty used to it with both the Dyonder controllers that I've been using, so the RGB one and this one. And in Silent Hill 2 Remake, I found it works more than well enough. I don't feel like I'm missing shots or missing aiming, but it definitely had a bit of a 20-minute, 15-minute period where I had to kind of get used to it and adjusted to the dead zones on this controller. And I'll put it like this, they're not bad by any stretch. Do I prefer the Xbox controllers and find them a bit smoother? Absolutely. But the biggest thing that we also have to look at, and the biggest caveat we have to look at with this controller, is that this controller is pretty close to a traditional PlayStation 4 controller, and so it works very closely to that. And if you prefer that type of controller and prefer that type of aiming, you'll probably find that there's a lot to love when it comes to this controller more generally. And the other big thing that I also want to highlight is if I did not have an Xbox and I was gaming exclusively on PC and I wanted just a good gaming controller, this would check all the boxes, and even better than that, it would check all those boxes at a very good price point. One of the cool things I noticed is Dyonder is almost basically, with the coupons and discounts you can get through Amazon currently, this controller is almost $10 cheaper than the RGB one that I previously reviewed, which as far as value goes is really, really good. And a couple things as well that I feel like you're getting out of this versus the RGB controller, minus the fact that this doesn't light up, is you're getting the better battery life, and they've also improved on a couple other things. The biggest thing being the rumble. I tested through the rumbling and it feels like it's a bit more prevalent. Now it's not perfect, but it feels a lot more prevalent when you're playing games, which I really appreciated. And as well as that, the pack-in charging cable, which for some people might be something that they're concerned about or not, but it's a bit longer, so if you actually want to use this wired or paired to your computer via just USB, you also have that option, which makes it just a bit more comfortable. Now I know they're minor things, but when you consider the price point and the fact that this is cheaper than their previous controller, it just adds to the value of what this is. Now, one final thing I just do want to highlight, I did highlight this in the previous product I reviewed from Dyonder. On Windows, you have limited support when it comes to PlayStation style controllers. While Steam tries to integrate it as well and tries to integrate it directly, most of my Windows games don't tend to interface with it if they're not a part of Steam. So for example, if you're going to play like a Gears of War, it won't necessarily just pick it up and work. So I do recommend using DS4 Windows, which is a free app online that pretty much immediately recognizes this controller, and it also gives you some pretty cool customization options. But once you go through that minor hurdle, this is a full-fledged working controller that at the price point I think is very good. Other than some minor deficits, really, I think that this controller has a lot to offer, especially at a $20 price point for people who want a good PS4 controller or want a good gaming controller for their PC. So that's everything I have to say about this controller. And again, if you're interested in potentially winning this controller, please subscribe to the channel and also post a comment in the comment section. And everyone who's posted those comments, I'll include in basically a raffle, and whoever wins, I'll be reaching out to you via the comment section to let you know that you've won the controller. So thank you for watching, and please let me know what you think of this product and if you've used it and what your experiences with it are as well.